He built a $1.8 million store. There's 3.5 feet of water in it, and 5 people are gonna die tonight. This actually happened to me. Stand by for the story. Hey, glad to meet you. I'm Dave Bay. I've been an entrepreneur now for over 34 years in multiple businesses. I'm here to help entrepreneurs and small business owners. I've lived it for years, entrepreneurs for decades and generations. I have dealt with every situation and every challenge you can possibly think of. We're gonna blow it up on here, no nonsense advice. Let's build a community of entrepreneurs, of small business owners. We are American business heroes. Business owners, you know that there's no planning that you can do to avoid a catastrophe. They just happen. They come out of the blue and you have to deal with them at that time. Well, this is a story of a catastrophe that I had to deal with back in 1997, a town called Falmouth, Kentucky. Oh, you can plan for dips in the market, different surges with sales, different expenses that happen to pop up. But when it comes to a real live catastrophe, you really just can't plan on that. In 1997, I had that happen to me, out of the blue. Of course, you had no idea it was going to come. That's the way catastrophes are. It was March 1st, 1997, in Falmouth, Kentucky, a small town located towards northern Kentucky. It was raining, and it was raining pretty hard, but it wasn't crazy. It just kept raining. I didn't think much about it. I went to bed that night, woke up on Saturday morning, it's still raining. And it's still raining pretty hard. But again, you just don't think about it. You've seen it rain this hard many times, and you've seen it rain for this long many times. But there was something different about this day. About 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturday, I get a phone call. And the call went something like this: Mr. Bay, yes, we're going to have to evacuate the town of Falmouth. Oh my gosh. The first thing I thought was, well, why? Why are you evacuating? There's a flood that's coming. It looks like it's a certain thing, and we're getting everybody out before it happens. Okay, all right. So I got in my car and I went down to Falmouth and I took a look around. I had just built a $1.8 million retail store with gas pumps, convenience items, a video store that was separate, and then also Lee's Famous Recipe fried chicken. The place also had a drive-through window, and you could buy all the products through the window. It was state-of-the-art for that time. In fact, it was featured in national trade magazines. So I went around town to see if I could help some of the people that I knew and some of the businesses get their stuff moved out. The rest of the town was much lower than where my store was located. When I built the store, I built up the ground 12 feet above the existing elevation. Now I knew exactly where the floodplain was, and the 100-year flood mark was about 8 feet lower than the floor of my new store. As I was going around helping people, I thought, well, I have a box truck back at my office, located about 8 miles outside of this town. I'll run back and I'll get this box truck so I can come back and help. I got to the office, got the box truck, made sure they had plenty of diesel fuel in it. It's a large truck, kind of like a large U-Haul truck. And I drove back to Falmouth, but by the time that I got back, there was about 2.5 to 3 feet of water on the road that I was driving on. When I left, the road was just wet from the rain. So I'm driving down the road, and you can imagine when you have 2.5 to 3 feet of water, you cannot see the side of the road, and really the only thing that you have to gauge by would be the buildings, the signposts, and the electrical poles. So that gives you a general idea of where the road is located. But you don't know about culverts and ditches and anything that floated onto the roadway and got stuck there. So you're really driving down through there blindly. Then I thought, well, I'm in this big box truck. If the water happens to get up high enough, it's going to lift the truck off the ground, just like a flotation device. At that point, I thought, well, I need to turn around and head back to the store where the elevation was higher. So finally, I got the truck turned around, which was hair-raising in itself because you don't know what you're backing into, you don't know what you're pulling into, and made my way back to the store very carefully. At the store, I went ahead, started sending people home. There were still plenty of people coming in the store to get gasoline and snacks and food because they were heading out of town. The whole town of Falmouth was going to be evacuated. Most of the town where the store was located, the floodplain again was about 8 feet lower than the floor of the store. So the businesses along there, I thought, okay, they're going to get flooded. There's no question about it, but we're going to be safe because the preliminary numbers that were coming out said flood was going to crest at a certain height. I knew exactly where that was in relation to the store. And I thought, okay, we'll be okay, but let's just help everybody else. So people went on home. People kept coming into the store and leaving. I went outside several times during this time to check to see where the water was as it was creeping up the parking lot. Because if you want to picture it, the store set up on a high elevation, and then the parking lot came lower and lower and lower down to the town elevation. Well, you've probably seen movies or you've seen shows where people will walk out in what's going to be a floodwater situation and take a yardstick, stick it in the ground so they can see how far up the water's coming and how high it's going to get. Well, in this situation, there was no need to have a yardstick. You could actually go out, look at the water creeping up the parking lot. It was coming up that fast. So at the point the water started coming into the gasoline dispensers, I thought, okay, I need to go in, I need to shut everything off, all the electricity, all the computers, and shut down the electric to the building, which I did. There really wasn't any time to get anything out, and again, the elevation of where the water was as opposed to where it needs to be to actually get into the store and cause damage, several feet away, vertical feet that is. So I got everything shut off just in case, turned off all the lights, locked the door, and I left. So to exit the town, and really at this point, there are 3 different exits to the town of Falmouth. I was on the north side. The store is located right by the river, but much higher than the river. And the main artery out of town is located adjacent to the property. So I pulled the truck out, got onto the highway, and went across the bridge. Crossing the bridge, I could look down and see the river was probably only about 2 feet from the bottom of the bridge. And so I can tell you that on that side of the town, at least I was the last one out. I felt like leaving town, shut off the lights, and pray for the best. So I went on home that night because really there wasn't anything else to do. And went in and just waited it out and watched the news. And the news was talking about the water still coming up, the water from the Licking River. Now it's interesting because this river actually flows north. It's one of the few rivers in the world that flows directly north. So from where the river starts around Moorhead, Kentucky, by the time it gets to Falmouth, it's directly north. The next town up is Butler, Kentucky, which I had actually another store located also right next to the river. That night, went to bed. Sunday morning, I woke up, got in my car because where I lived, there wasn't any floodwater around that area, and I could travel north from that point to Butler and see what's going on around the store there. And it was around 10 a.m., maybe 11 a.m., that the floodwaters through a creek that actually had backed up started to cross the main highway and come towards the store. Hey, thanks for being here. What would you like to know about being an entrepreneur or a small business owner? Leave your thoughts and questions in the comments below, and I will answer those in future videos. Now back to the show. That store in Butler actually ended up with 18 inches of water in it. And at that point, I had to leave that location and go back home as well. So I get back home and told my wife, well, we're just gonna have to wait it out. We're gonna have to see what's going on. And I still didn't know if the store in Falmouth would actually get floodwaters or not, because again, it was at the highest elevation in that area. So my wife said, well, what are we gonna do? If the town doesn't come back, the store gets flooded. I said, well, they can take everything, but they can't take my brain and they can't take my willpower or drive, so we'll figure this thing out. So what did happen to the store in Butler, what did happen to the store in Falmouth, and most importantly, what happened to the people of the town of Falmouth, all their houses, all their belongings, all the businesses that are located there, what happened? Well, stay tuned, I'm going to cover that in the next video. Thanks. Make sure you watch part 2 of this video by clicking right here.